Hello everybody, it's p-brane. I want to talk about action-reaction and as it relates to the supposed spinning of the Earth on its axis and the subsequent flattening of the poles and the equatorial bulge. Let's do a little background first. The Earth is said to be rotating once every 24 hours, and it's said to have a diameter of 8,000 miles and a radius of 4,000 miles with a 25,000 mile circumference. That would give the Earth a rim velocity or equatorial speed of about 1,000 miles per hour. And that 1,000 mile per hour equatorial speed is said to be bulging the Earth 14 miles high and flattening the poles, right? Gazillions of tons of dirt, water, and mud and everything, rock all around the equator, 14 miles high. This is what they're saying is going on. And yet they're telling us we can't feel this at the surface. It's going on underneath us. There's a centrifugal force powerful enough to do that, and sustaining that, as it says here in Wikipedia. An equatorial bulge is due to the force exerted by its rotation, and it says the Earth is ductile, which means malleable, right? It's flexible. The Earth's equatorial bulge has been decreasing in step, there's the key, in step, with the decrease in the rate of rotation. But yet, we can't feel this at the surface. Okay, so I want to talk about the action and reaction as it relates to the Earth. Okay, so here you have a golf ball being hit. The golf ball is being flattened. You can think of that as the distortion or the disfiguring of the Earth due to the spin. Okay, so when the golf ball is flattened, that's the action. The reaction is the ball is going to take off at 150 miles per hour or whatever it is, right? So it can't crush that. You can't have that impact and say, well, the ball is just going to sit there on the tee. That's an impossibility. That can't happen. It can't happen because there's a reaction to the action. And it's the same as the spinning ball, Earth, right? It's spinning and it's flattening at the poles and bulging. And the bulging says that everything wants to fly out from center, right? And so all the water wants to rush to the equator and spin off the ball. That's what it wants to do. It can't do anything else. Let's take this tennis ball. The tennis ball gets hit. It gets completely flattened. Now, it's not logical and it's physically impossible that the ball is just going to sit there in its squashed, flattened state, okay, and not spring off at 100 miles per hour, whatever it is. Okay, same with this baseball. It's illogical and impossible for it to stay in that position. The reaction to the action of it being compressed is that it's going to take off. Okay, so now when it comes to a spinning object, clearly it's not being hit, but the centrifugal force, or whatever force you want to call it, is causing the ball, let's say we spin a ball, it's causing it to flatten at the poles and bulge at its equator. Okay, now the action is the spinning, the reaction is the flattening and the bulging. And the bulging is really no more than everything wanting to fly off, as you see in my spinning balloon and the spinning ball. The balloon has a skin, the ball doesn't. So it shows if there's water on the ball, it flies off. And I'll show you this clip right here. Immediately upon starting to spin, the water's starting to fly off. And as I said in my last video, and you need to check that out, I'm standing on the Earth. Because they'll say, gravity, gravity. Well, I'm standing on the gravity ball right now, and the water's flying up. Now, before this water even flies up, it has to be rushing to the equator because it's flying off at the equator. So this is a catastrophe, a cataclysmic, no life can exist on a spinning ball. I'll digress for a minute in that I'll just say this is how they've gaslighted us. The deceivers in this world, many, many years, 500 years ago, whatever it is, first convinced us that we live on a ball. Well, we all know common sense, you can't live on a ball. That's ridiculous. So they convinced us we lived on a ball, and it's a spinning ball. Okay, and so they came up with this equatorial bulge, 14 miles high, and another thing they'll come out and say, oh, but it's not rotating, but once in 24 hours, look at the hour hand on a clock. Do you think you'd feel that? And, okay, stop saying that. They're still saying that. Stop saying it, because they did not come up with the bulge based on the rotational period. They came up with the bulge based on the rim velocity of the rotating ball Earth, which is 1,000 miles per hour. Okay? But where they made their mistake, and yes, these brilliant scientists and physicists in the past, well, they made a mistake because they're trying to support a lie. The spinning ball is a hoax. It's not true. So as detectives, we look at that and we find holes in the case. Well, this is a huge hole that shows that it cannot be spinning, because you would have water, as I show here with the balloon and the ball. Water's flying off. Uh-oh, whoops, the Earth has water on it. Okay, so you can't have it spinning and not have the water be disturbed and flung all over the place. That's the action-reaction. The action is spinning a ball. The reaction is flattening the poles, and everything wants to leave the center of rotation. Everything wants to fly out at the equator. It'll move to the equator and fly out. That's what it's going to do. Okay? So this is a scam. It's a hoax. It never happened. You cannot have a scene like this with still water, and we have this at all latitudes on the Earth, or this one, unless the Earth is completely still. Rotation causes a disfiguring to whatever rotates. Now, and I'm not saying this, this is what the scientists came up with. 14-mile high bulge around the Earth and the flattening of the poles. Can't be. But they know darn well that a ball rotating at a surface speed or the rim velocity of 1,000 miles per hour will disfigure. They know that. But they didn't count on people looking into it. They didn't count on people going, sorry, this is busted. We don't believe it anymore. We believed it at one time, but we don't believe it. And we know that the only reason you came up with this cockamamie story was to gaslight us. And gaslighting, what that is trickery. It's the narcissists do, Satanists, and they trick you, and now you no longer can trust your senses, because they're telling you walking around on a ball, and there are people on the other side of the ball from you that are upside down. That's gaslight number one. Gaslight number two is that it's rotating and spinning, and you can't feel it. You no longer can trust your senses, and you have to look to them, the high priests, to tell me what the reality is. Okay? But this is 2019. This is done. Killed it in the last video, showing that the Earth cannot rotate. The blue marble, which is turning black and decaying, is trying to get out of the coffin, so well, shoving it back in, and got to put a few more nails in the coffin. And that's this video. So I've showed with the baseball, the golf ball, the tennis ball, that once you compress it, it wants to spring out. That's the action-reaction. With a spinning object, it's the flattening. You spin it is the action. The flattening and the bulging is the reaction. And the water would want to fly off of the ball. That's just how it is. Okay, now you couple that with the orbit that they say we're doing. Okay, so remember, it's the rim velocity that causes the bulge of the Earth, 1,000 miles per hour. Well, the Earth rotating around the sun is also a large rotation at 66,000 mile per hour rim speed for the Earth. It's actually more, because when it's rotating in the orbital direction, that part of the Earth, you'd add 1,000 miles per hour speed. And then when that part of the Earth rotates around to the inside and it's rotating against the orbital direction, you subtract 1,000. So you'd have a 2,000 mile per hour fluctuation in rim velocity for the Earth at different, separate halves of the Earth every 12 hours. Again, devastating. The Earth would explode. It'd blow apart. So this fantasy, this hoax is finally being exposed. It can't happen. It's done. So if you have spin and a bulge and flattening the poles, then you have to have this. But since we see this, the Earth's not spinning. I rest my case. Thank you so much. It's time to get the globes out of the classroom, start petitioning to get the globes out of movies and everywhere else, and let it be known it's done. This is impossible. It cannot be spinning and orbiting. We live on an immovable, stationary plane. All right. Thank you so much for watching. There's only one thing left to do. Let's kick the ball out of here. Take care.